Welcome to the Vinicius Studio podcast, where music, stories, timeless art, and resonant ideas help us live better, think deeper, and feel more alive. Welcome everybody. This is Vinicius Barbosa Pipa. I'm a composer and a songwriter. I'm a professor at Berklee College of Music Online and an Emmy nominee. So in today's episode, I'm going to be talking about music and specifically the ways in which music can bring us together. We obviously live in a time where there are many things that divide us, but I think music is not one of them, or at least it can be one of the things that connects us. Now, I'm not much of a kumbaya type person. I like to think of myself a little bit more realistic than that. So that's not the approach I'm going to be taking here in this episode, but I do want to cover some of the ways I believe music meaningfully connects us, the ways that music realistically can bring us together, okay? So let's dive in, and I hope you enjoy it. Before we jump into it, I have something to ask of you. If you are listening to this podcast on one of the podcast apps, so Spotify or Apple Podcasts, would you give me a follow over there? And if you're listening on YouTube, please hit subscribe and leave a like on the video and maybe a comment in the comment section. That way the algorithm will bless me and will put my podcast in front of more and more people so they can experience all this goodness as well. All right, thank you so much. Music is one of the glues that keeps the fabric of a particular society together. It's not the only one, obviously. We have many other things, but music is definitely one of them. If we want to define culture, right, we can look at it like this: the way of life of a people. Yes, and that involves high-level things like values, right, a shared history, shared religion, but also cultural products like music and art and so on, and even pop culture like pop music or movies or media. You can see where I'm getting at here. A particular country or even a particular state, let's say in the United States, one of the things that joins the people together is the music that we listen to, the music that we are exposed to, the music that we all gravitate towards. So that's the first way in which it does that, right? I happen to teach a class that is all about that, actually, where my students are seeking to learn about the music of a culture. So they need to learn how to compose music that sounds like it's from another country. And one of the things they have to do is to study the country in its entirety, and study its culture, study its history, its values, even its religion, and to see in what ways that informs music and in what ways that is informed by music. So there's kind of a symbiotic relationship between music and the rest of culture. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Now, universal language. Many people say that music is a universal language, and that may sound a little bit tacky, but it is true, right? Here's a proof. You don't need to understand anything about a place, but if you listen to its music, it might move you. You can very easily come to enjoy music that has language that you don't even understand. I personally fell in love with music in English way before I learned a single word in that language. And I've met many people in music school here in the US when I moved that were in love with Brazilian music without knowing a lick of Portuguese. So the point here is this: music does transcend language and even culture in some ways, right? And music has this special way of carrying some of the flavors of whichever culture it originated from, either through the language or instrumentation, or even through the kind of aesthetic decisions that a band, an artist, or a composer might make. Okay, how else does music bring us together? Good music comes from the heart, or as the poets say, from the wellspring of the soul. Seeing the heart of another human being is deeply impactful. Sometimes it's because you can relate to them. They're singing about something that you resonate with. Other times, they point something out that you haven't seen in that same way, right? They sing about something beautiful that you hadn't quite noticed yet, or you get caught up in the poetry or the way the sound of the music hits you. At other times, it seems like the music is being sung just for you. It understands you and it applies to you in a way that's almost shocking, like the singer knows you, or the music fits perfectly with the moment that you're in, like a scene from a movie. So that's why you can sometimes find yourself moved by music that is made by people who are so different than you are, like people in a different age group, or even people who have long passed away. It's a wonderful thing. I grew up listening to British classic rock from the 1970s. I have nothing to do with that time period or with that people group, but somehow it seems like they understood me. I was very drawn to those rhythms, to that kind of musical sound, and when I started to understand lyrics a little bit, I was drawn to the poetry of the British lyrics. It's just wonderful. It's a wonderful thing. How else does music bring us together? Music is deeper than reason. When somebody talks, all you have is their words. Sometimes they make sense. Sometimes their sentences are well constructed. They have opinions or ideas that you may agree with, etc., or just the opposite. They may talk in a nonsensical way, or speak in a convoluted manner, or express opinions or ideas that you dislike. The bottom line is this: you interact with speech rationally, with your brain, right? Music is very different. It sometimes has words, that's true, but have you ever noticed that even when a song is about something you don't relate to, you may find yourself resonating with it anyway? That's because music bypasses the rational side of us. It bypasses the brain and it goes straight to the heart. That's one of the most powerful things about music. That's the mystery of musical sounds. They can break through a person's defenses very easily. And that's why we can be moved emotionally by music, because the primary target of music is not the head, but the heart. And good music is really, really good at doing that. Artists craft it just right for a maximal impact. You know, they make things a little bit vague, or they craft things in a certain way that they can be absorbed and even transformed by you, the listener, so they can adapt to you. It's wonderful and it's fascinating, and that's part of how we kind of digest poetry, the poetry that might be in a piece of music. So music connects us to one another in an individual way also, and you can really see this when you go to a concert. Sure, when you go to a concert, you may all be there. You and all the other people who are there might have come because you're all interested in the same band, so you already have a shared interest. But it is the case that people in a concert may come from a lot of different walks of life. But when the music starts playing, it hits everybody, and it literally moves everyone in the same way, you know, through its rhythms and its harmonies and melodies and so on. Isn't that interesting? We don't have a lot of places in our culture anymore that have that kind of power. The power of kind of turning on the rational brain for a little bit and immersing ourselves in something that's bigger than our own heads. I dare say that it's almost a religious experience when you do that, when you engage with people in a concert through music, right? Or, you know, say you're in a sporting event. I saw this a lot in Brazil going to soccer games. The way that the entire crowd connects to one another and operate as one is always through music, singing or chanting or playing instruments and things like that, right? Again, there's a quasi-religious experience that you don't get anymore in a lot of places in our society today. Which brings me to my last point here. So we talked about music keeping the fabric of a culture together. We talked about music being an universal language. We talked about music coming from the heart and connecting your heart to the heart of a songwriter or a singer. We talked about music being deeper than reason and bypassing the brain, going straight to the heart. We talked about music connecting us to one another interpersonally when you go to a concert or a sporting event. Now, the biggest thing about music, and this may be a stretch for some of you who are a little bit on the atheistic side, music points to something outside of ourselves, namely the transcendent, in other words, God. I talked about this before, and it sounds like I'm trying to sell you a religion. I am not, although I have been bought by that religion. That is what the classical thinkers, philosophers, theologians used to call beauty with a capital B. It's one of the three transcendentals, along with truth and goodness, that are said by these great thinkers, philosophers, theologians from the past. They are said to be direct pathways to God. Those of us who do believe in God, we know that when you find yourself in a place that is beautiful, right? A story that makes you cry, or a piece of music that stirs your chest, or a poem that moves you into a kind of sadness that somehow feels good. You're entering God's property now. You're hearing an echo of his voice. Now, how does that work? Beauty is a truth that can't be spoken in any other way. As the great poet John Keats said, beauty is truth, and truth is beauty, and that is all you know on earth and all you need to know. When you encounter beauty in music, in art, in nature, whatever it is, you are coming face to face with the Creator. The world is a beautiful place because He is beauty. You can't dip your toes in the stream of beauty without somehow connecting to the source and slowly having your eyes open up. So what do we learn from all of this? Not quite a kumbaya type idea. That's not really what I'm advocating for here. But in a time like ours where there is so much that can divide us and sort of tear us apart at the seams, music does provide for us a meaningful way, a real way of connection, right? So I'm hoping to show that it can be a kind of a refuge for us in our current cultural climate. And that, my friends, is the mystery as well as the gift of music. Thanks for listening.